What is up, Trinity Youth family? Oh man, so this is a little bit bittersweet. It's bitter because I wish that we were just able to get together and we were hanging out in groups, and I was being able to teach you guys in person. But sweet because at least I get to talk to you in some way, shape, or form. Oops. So let me just give you the rundown. Okay, here's the rundown. We're in week 2 of our community series, talking about community in huddles. I am outside right now. It's a little muggy, but not bad. I'm not complaining. There are kids outside. There's birds. There's traffic. So if you hear some of that stuff, that's just what it is. But I'm going to talk to you guys here, and like I said, I'm really happy to be with you guys. So today we're going to talk about community, and we're going to talk about what does it mean to come into this community in a humble way, to bring humility into it. And we thought it was the best way to kick it off as we start huddles again, right? So we're just now getting back into huddles. We're just now kicking huddles off. Hopefully you guys are finding that you can find a place to be together, that say social distance, but that at least you get together. So much better being together than to be in Zoom. So, but what does it mean, you guys, to be in community and to bring humility, for me to bring humility into my community, to lead with humility, because that's a really important characteristic and thing. And as we're going to find out today, when we look at the story of Jesus, we're going to find out that humility was something that very much characterized who he was, and what he always led with. And so then, what does it look like for us to step into that with him? Little story real quick to kick off. So it's, COVID is just weird. There's not a lot to do, right? Like, I haven't eaten inside a restaurant in 6 months, 7 months. I haven't been inside a friend's house in that long. Like, I haven't done a lot of things, right? The one thing that we've been able to do is baseball still has happened. Like, my boys both played baseball this summer. I got to coach their teams. Super fun. Micah just started on a new team, and on this new team, they have this little acronym that they that is kind of like their thing that they keep coming back to. And the acronym spells out dirty, which is funny, but it spells out dirty, and like each letter stands for something. Like D stands for dub, so they're trying to get the win on everything, on every pitch, on every play, every at bat. They're trying to get the win. It's cool. They're 8 and 9, so it makes a lot of sense. But the Y in dirty stands for you before me. And the coach said this in the very first practice. He says it's you before me. And what that means is that as a team, as a baseball team, we're not individuals. We're better as a team together. And what happens for them on this, even though they're these little kids, what happens is it's better when I put you first before myself, when I put the team first, when I put my teammates first before me. That's going to make our team better, right? Because we're not just looking out for our own self-interest. We're not just trying to do what's best for me, but instead, no, I'm going to do what's best for you. I'm going to do what's best for the team, and then that's going to be the best thing. That's the same kind of mentality, you guys, that we need to bring into these huddles, into our friend groups, into our families. If we can somehow do this, put you before me, I think we're going to see massive changes, right? I think it's a huge cultural shift, attitude shift in how we do things. And it's even in this passage we're going to look at today. We're going to be in Philippians 2, 1 through 11. And even when we look at that idea of what does it mean to put you before me, man, if we can do that in our groups, we come together and we're like, man, I'm here for you guys. I'm not here to just withdraw. I'm actually here to deposit. I'm here to put something in. I'm here to add to this, not just take from it. And I think that is such a huge thing. So as we get huddles kicked off, here's my hope and my prayer, you guys, is that my hope and my prayer is that that these huddles will be, that we will find real community, that we will be able to find that you once a week know that you, even though in COVID, even though it looks different, you still have that safe place to go. You still have that community that you get to go to and you get to call your crew. That is your huddle. That is your tribe. You know that when you go there, you can be yourself and you can come in and you can serve your peers, your friends, your huddle mates, your buddies, your girlfriends. You can serve them by coming and saying, I'm here to put the group first. But also, when you do that, it's not just about that, but you also get in return. So let's look at the passage today, Philippians 2, 1 through 11. And actually, I love this. I love this passage. I really do. Let's look and see what it says. I'm reading from a different version than I normally would. I'm reading from the New Revised Version, but this is good. It says, if then there's any encouragement in Christ, any consolation from love, any sharing in the Spirit, any compassion and sympathy, making my joy complete, be of the same mind, have the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. And then check this out. This is verse 3. This is the part that I really love because this is so clear. Paul says this. He says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you not look to your own interest, but to the interest of others. I take a little bit of, it's encouraging that 2,000 years ago when Paul was writing this, that they were dealing with the same things that we're dealing with, right? That Paul was having to remind the very first Christians in Philippi 2,000 years ago, the same things that we need to be reminded of today. Like, put others before yourself. Because it is natural for us to put ourselves first, right? It is natural for us to think of ourselves first, for us to naturally not put others. It has been a at least 2,000 year old concept of, I need to think of others before myself. And then he goes on to say this. He says, let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. So he's saying, hey, you know what? Follow the example that Jesus set for us. And here's what it is. Who? This is talking about Jesus. Who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, and being found in human form, and he humbled himself. And he became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God has also highly exalted him and gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bend, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. As I was reading this earlier, I thought to myself, claiming to be a Christian it shouldn't so much be a title that we just give ourselves, right? So I was thinking back, I heard a guy say this earlier this week, and it really resonated with me. He said, back in the early church in like Acts, in the book of Acts, we see the name Christian given for the very first time. It was the very first time that that somebody had ever been called a Christian. And the reason they called that first group of Christians, they actually just started calling them Christians. They weren't going out saying, hey, by the way, we started this new group of Christians, you can call us that. That's not how it worked. Instead, it was actually different. They started calling them Christians, and they said they are Christians because that word meant little Christ. It was like they were imitators of Christ. They were imitating Jesus so much in the way they lived, in the way that they operated, in the way they treated each other, and they took on the teachings of Jesus so much that they started calling him little Christ. Literally. They were like, oh, those guys are like little Christ. They're like imitating. They're doing the things that Jesus did. So being called a Christian was more about the actions of how they were living. And it wasn't just this title that they were like, what am I going to be? Yeah, you know what? We're Christian. Just call us Christians. We'll like that. We believe in Jesus. It wasn't even that. It was like they so much are emulating the person of who Jesus is that we're going to just call them Christians, little Christ. And in this passage in Philippians, Paul says, he even uses the word a couple times, but he says the way that Jesus was in this world, the way he operated, what he did was in humility, he humbled himself, And he became a human being. He became one of us. God incarnate, God in flesh, God with skin. He became one of us so that he could live like us. He humbled himself from the position of literally God, right? And said, no, I'm going to take on the form of a human being. He didn't have to do that, but in love, he did do that. He humbled himself. And so when in the book of Acts, they start calling these first followers of Jesus Christians little Christ, what it's saying to me is that they took so much of who Jesus was onto themselves. And they humbled themselves. They were humbled. That was one of the characteristics they would have taken on from Jesus. And that's what we today are called to do. So as you sit in your huddle and you sit in your group of friends, how do we take on that characteristic of humility when we are with each other? Well, let me just speak from one thing. And I'm going to speak not from, hey, I do it this way and it's so good, but hey, this is where I really struggle and I need to constantly remind myself so that when I come into the group that I'm not doing this. You don't always have to be right. Maybe being a part of the group isn't about being right. Maybe it's just being present. Maybe it's just being there for a friend. Maybe it's just encouraging them when they've had a really hard day. Maybe when school is just becoming overwhelming, it's putting your arm around them and saying, hey, can I pray with you? Hey, can I be there with you? Hey, man, you got this. You can do this. Hey, you know what? You bombed that test. It's okay. That doesn't define who you are. Oh, you think that or you believe that? Yeah, I don't agree with that. But it's not always about being right. Okay, I'm talking to me right now. Okay, I'm just preaching to me. You guys can listen. I'm just preaching to me. It's not always about being right. You know what? I would rather be a great friend. I would rather be a great leader. I would rather be a great peer. I'd rather be a great youth pastor that listens and cares about people than being a friend that's always right. But that's humility that comes in, right? That we don't always have to be right. We don't always have to be on top. We're going to put ourselves in a humble position. I was just thinking about, man, what are other examples of Jesus being humble? And the most glaring example was when Jesus, with his disciples, the night before he was betrayed in the upper room, and he went and he washed their feet. The actions of how Jesus lived and the things he did just screamed humility. And if we have our huddles, I just want you to think about you. I don't know how many people are in your huddle. Maybe there's 4 of you. Maybe there's 8 of you. It doesn't matter. But what if every person in that huddle came to the table leading with humility? What would happen in that community if that's the way we led? What if I, as a leader, came to the table in humility, a humble heart, putting you before me, right? Put you before me. I'm just going to close with this, and then I'm done here. But so Micah had two practices before his first tournament, right? And every time we're talking about you before me, and in our car we even would go over what each letter in the acronym meant, you know. But we would say, and you before me, team before myself. And so they go into this tournament, this 8 years old, but it's so much fun. They go into this tournament, and the first day they have a doubleheader, and they crush both teams. Awesome, so much fun. So they come into the second day. They've only had 2 practices before this tournament, just a brand new team. And the second day they come in flying high, right? Like, dude, we just won. And got lost close, won the first game, and then got crushed the second game. So then they come into the last day, and it's like they just came out of this. And to see these boys pick each other up and not complain when they're not hitting where they want to or playing where they are, but they just constantly came and they kept putting the team before themselves. And it was so much fun to watch. And it was these little 8-year-olds were teaching me a lesson on what it means to put you before me. Because they were sitting there cheering each other on. Winning, losing, it didn't matter. Picking each other up, great play, bad play. picking each other up, and it was so inspiring. And I was like, yes, you before me, you before me. And then here we are this week talking about humility in our huddles, in our communities. May you be a person, may we be a people that are humble in character. Because when you're humble and you lead with humility, you look like Christ, and you start to really, that name of Christian, of being a little Christ, really starts to click with people. Oh, I get it. I know. Oh, I see why. Just like those first Christians. So may we be a humble people that imitate and look like Jesus. All right, guys. Enjoy the conversations. I miss you guys. We'll see you soon. Miss you guys.